Hello, and thank you for tuning in. I truly appreciate your support. So if you find this video helpful, please like and subscribe to stay updated with future content. If you have any questions or if there's a specific topic you'd like me to dive deeper into, or even something I haven't covered yet, feel free to drop a comment below. I always welcome your feedback and suggestions. Today, I'm going to walk you through how to install Windows Subsystem for Linux 2 on Windows Server 2025 using Rocky Linux 9.5 and php IPAM. So what is WSL? WSL allows you to run a Linux distribution like Ubuntu, Debian, Kali, Rocky, or Rocky Linux directly inside Windows without the need for a virtual machine or dual boot. It's a powerful tool for scripting, networking, and running Linux utilities or programs like php IPAM within the Windows environment. Some of the key benefits of WSL2 include instant startup speeds, lightweight performance, low resource usage, and let's get started. Before we dive in, I have a couple of assumptions. You already have a Windows Server at least 2025 installed, and you're at least somewhat familiar with PowerShell, as we'll be using it throughout the setup. To get to and I will put this, I guess I'll post this to the Git site, but you're going to want to get the base image of Rocky Linux. I've already downloaded this and put it in this folder that I call WSL. So that we're good to just kind of start working. Now, there's a few things we need to install, and I'll put this on the Git site. Oops. Let me undo that and copy this. The first piece that we need to do is we need to enable using DSIM the Microsoft Windows Subsystem for Linux. And before I get too far, this is going to I set it to not restart. I want to manually restart. And then the next piece is, because it's a server, I have to enable the virtual machine platform. Now in Windows 10 and 11, it's a little bit different. I'll probably do a video over there for that too. But as you can see, this is the virtual machine platform. Now I'm going to need to restart the computer to get to the point where I'm going to install WSL2. So that it will give that a few seconds. I don't think my Hyper-V is too slow. Or actually, sorry, it's a VMware server. And we'll give it a second more here. There we go. So we should be back in. Let's get PowerShell opened. Okay. All right. So we now want to install WSL. So it's as simple as that. And this will run for a few seconds. Now, this installation takes a little while, so I may pause here, but the reason why it takes a little while is that it's actually downloading in the background by default Ubuntu. Okay, and as you can see, it completed successfully. FYI, I did pause. It did download and install Ubuntu as a default distribution, and you can see that the 2412 WSL has been installed. Now you can run WSL update, but it's going to say I'm already on the most recent. Now I want to set to WSL to version 2. Now there's two different versions, 1 and 2. I want to operate on version 2. The next piece is we need to change directories. Let's see. WSL, and I'm going to do, and that's where I had downloaded earlier. And what I want to do is import Rocky Linux. Now, if you look at the instructions, Rocky Linux is not actually listed in the default distros on the Microsoft site. So that's why I had to download it like this. And I'm going to take and install this, or import it is a better word. I'm going to actually pause that because it takes a little while. Okay, so now that that has successfully finished, I'm going to list the distros that are on my machine and what their status is, or sorry, which one's default. Now, the important thing here is I need to change to Rocky Linux, and otherwise the commands we'll be using for Linux will actually be the default. So we'll change that now to Rocky Linux, and if I do the WSL, you'll see now that Rocky Linux is validated as the default architecture. Now that we've gotten everything set up for our environment, we need to create a config file for our Rocky Linux. And there are two files that control our Linux servers in WSL. The first is WSL config, and the second is WSL.conf. The one I'll be talking about now, WSL config, and is a control file on the Windows side, and will be placed in the Windows user profile directory and affects all WSL2 distros. WSL.conf must be placed inside each distro. So you could have 10 of these if you needed to, and requires a reboot of that distro to take effect. These control distro-specific WSL settings such as auto mount behavior, interoperability, user settings, and network settings like control and host name, DNS, so on and so forth. So let's do the Windows side. To do that, I'm going to open Notepad, click yes, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to drop, because I already have my config in here. So you can see I want to dedicate 8 gig of memory, 4 processors. I want to create a swap file that's 8 gig. And I want to tell it where to make the swap file. Now you'll notice there's double slashes here, and that's because you need to have those. And then localhost forwarding, which makes the networking faster. If you don't do these settings, it'll seem like it's running in molasses. So just remember, and in my notes that I post, I'll give that to you. So now that we have that config file, we're going to load Rocky Linux. To do that, I'm going to hit that, and what's going to happen is you'll actually know Rocky Linux is installed when you see it in the start button. This actually takes a little while because the first time this is loaded, it needs to load and create the swap file and a few other items that we've set up. And you can see this in here. And so when you see the swap file and you see this new folder with that's the hard drive, right? And there it is. So now this will open the terminal for Rocky Linux. So let's zoom in a little bit. The very first thing we need to do is make sure we're up to date. And so it'll load a few items here, and then these distros are base distros, so certain things like sudo are not installed. So you always want to run an update. Now, you need to install sudo to get sudo to work, and the other thing is you need to install the repos. So as in the other videos of mine, I'm just going to run through this real fast. There are some nuanced items here. One of them is curl package, and I will go into that in a second here. Okay, so we're installing the original system is using curl minimal. So I want to use this, so I'm going to swap them. So next, I want to load Apache. And I'll just run through this last piece. Now, after this is the systemd. So for some reason, systemd is not installed. Oops, is not installed in the base system. So I need to use that to set this up, and we'll let that go. Now, this will allow me to use systemd. Now, the thing is, to use systemd, I actually need to reboot. And the way you reboot, or I'm sorry. So now I need to actually enable systemd in the Linux system. So to do that, I'll use the WSL file conf, right? And we'll save that. Now I have to go back to PowerShell, and we actually need to shut down and restart Rocky Linux. And let's restart it. And if we did that right, this should be back up and running. And it is. So let's zoom in a little bit. Now, if systemd is working, I should be able to do a HTTP restart or start, sorry, and enable, and it just worked. And let's check HTTP, and it's working. Okay, so now I need to just run through, and we'll set up the items to get php IPAM installed. We'll enable and start php FPM in a second here. So we'll just, okay, so here we go. We'll start those up, and we'll reload Apache to get this set up. Oh, that's right. Now, normally I would enable port 80, but the actual firewall is the Windows firewall. So we're just going to skip setting up the firewall to allow HTTP through it on the Linux box. Okay, that's almost done. So we'll start and enable MariaDB, and we will do the secure installation. So okay, so now that that's done, I'm going to install webmin. I know that some people don't like that, but This is really a training video, so if you need to go to production, you don't need to install Webmin. Let's get the Webmin started for the installer. Okay, now that we have that, and again, I'm not going to enable the firewall because the firewall is going to use actually the Windows firewall. So now I need to install the components for php IPAM. Once this is done, so there we are. And we want to now grab php IPAM. And once this finishes, we're almost done. We want to then just do our standard config for php IPAM. So go into there, copy the distribution file, and then we'll update the config file. And okay, so now we want to do an ifconfig, right? So we're currently utilizing that IP address. So in order to port forward, right, what we're going to do here, grab that. So we want to grab that IP address and we want to set up a net SH, right, to allow us to do a port proxy. So that's for port 80 for php IPAM. It's going to look like that. Port proxy add IP4, listen to port and to there and connect to port, right? And make sure we have this same. Right, so we have the right IP address and we should be good to go. Now we need to look for the firewall settings to allow php IPAM to be reached. So we're going to create an inbound rule. And we're going to go to new rule. And we're going to do port, hit next. And we're going to do 80 and 10,000 because Webmin uses 10,000. We're going to hit next and we're going to allow the connection. This is if you're doing HTTPS, and we're going to assign to all interfaces, and we're just going to call it php IPAM, hit finish, and it's there. So now the item that we need to do is, let me open a browser. Where's my browser? Ah, here it is. Now this is on another computer, and what I want to do is over here, I want to look for my IP address here, which is 1.253, right? And we have php IPAM. And if I go here, and right, that should install the database. And next, we want to give it an admin password. Should ask me to log in. I did this all right. All right. So here we are. And as you can see, we have a fully working php IPAM, and it's actually being hosted inside of our server, Windows 2025. Right there, right here. Well, I hope this made it easier to understand how to use Windows Subsystem for Linux on Windows Server 2025, especially with Rocky Linux 9.5 and php IPAM. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe, and feel free to leave a comment below. Let me know what you enjoyed or what you'd like me to cover next. Thanks again, and have a great day.